Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode number 31 of the Raw Men podcast. Once again, I am joined by co-host Mark Nebo of Be Secular, and tonight we are interviewing Dan Ellis, and he's going to tell us something I don't know anything at all about the World Congress of Families. And he's American Atheists Regional Representative or Regional Director of Utah. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That is correct. It's a good job to have if you can get it. Doesn't pay very well because that's what nonprofits do. But
or anything, yeah.
yeah, but it's still a fun gig. All right, so Mark, you had some announcements for us. What are they, please?
Well, we got a couple announcements. The first one is that this show is sponsored by the Normalize Atheism campaign. It's been a year since the Normalize Atheism campaign has kicked off. We've had somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60,000 tweets over the last year of atheists coming out and talking about how atheism really is normal and how it's important to express yourself. And in honor of the one-year anniversary, the original Normalize Atheism shirt is back available for a limited time. You can get it at normalizeatheism.com. They'll be shipped around the end of October, and we're really excited to offer that again. Also, I wanted to mention that to remind everybody, in the Carolina region, not only is hopefully the Hurricane Joaquin is not going to hit, but the Carolina Secular Conference is this weekend. I will be the MC for that event. My lovely wife Shannon will be speaking at the event, and there's some awesome other speakers in the lineup. Go to carolinasecularassociation.org or VACACON, VACACON.org to find out more information.
All right, I have nothing to add to that. Dan, what is the World Congress of Families, and why are they of interest to you or to us?
The World Congress of Families has been labeled a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. They're an anti-gay association of people who go around saying really hurtful, hateful, awful things and inspiring others to do a lot of really hateful things toward the LGBT community. Here in Utah, the local atheists group, Atheists of Utah, and all of the other secular groups, the Humanists of Utah, have all been very, very supportive of the LGBT community. Especially here in Utah, it seems that anytime somebody comes out of the closet as gay, more likely than not, they are also very secular. So we try to be as supportive of that community as possible to let them know that, not only can you come out of the closet as a gay or lesbian or bisexual person, but you can also come out as a non-believer, and we give them a soft place to land when they do both between the two communities. So the World Congress of Families is coming to Utah at the end of the month. This is the first time that they've actually held their conference in the United States at all, and they're bringing it here to Salt Lake City, behind the Zion Curtain and in the heart of Mormondom, because they know that's a safe spot for them to spew all of their hateful rhetoric.
Where did they have they? I mean, how long have they been doing it, and where have they been hosting it up until this point? Do you know?
This is the World Congress of Families number 9. I believe World Congress of Families number 8 was supposed to be in Moscow, but was canceled because of all of the goings on there.
The Pussy Riot stuff?
Not just the Pussy Riot stuff.
Okay.
Okay, somebody want to fill me in? What is a Pussy Riot, and why aren't I in Moscow? Because it sounds like
I think there's probably a couple of different versions of a Pussy Riot.
Yeah.
I think the one Mark is referring to is a Russian female band a Russian female feminist band who is very outspoken and not at all afraid to speak truth to power when it comes to telling Putin that he's full of shit.
Yeah, they got.
Can I say that on your show?
Yeah, you can say Putin's full of shit. That could be the title of a show, Putin's full of shit. But yeah, they got arrested at least once, a couple times, I think, over speech things that the government didn't agree with, and but I agree that the first time you hear the term Pussy Riot, that's not what you think. That's not what comes to mind.
Not for most people, probably.
Okay, so what's the big deal about them hosting their conference in the United States?
The big deal about them hosting here in the U.S. is that they've typically gone to other countries where they have a much more welcoming audience.
I don't get that. So you're talking about this is a religious group, right?
They are primarily evangelical Christians, correct?
Okay, so we have a primarily evangelical Christian group of fag haters, essentially, and you think that they're more or they think they're more welcome in other countries than they would be in the U.S.
Yeah.
What other countries are we talking about? Because I want to avoid those.
Well, Russia, of course. Uganda would be another one. The World Congress of Families has such wonderful characters associated with them as Scott Lively. The World Congress of Families has tried to distance themselves from Scott Lively. Are you aware of who he is? And
well, even if I was, I'm sure people out there may not be. So,
I admit I'm not. I admit I have no idea who that is.
So Scott Lively is the wonderful person who helped sponsor and pass and get the Ugandan government to pass their Kill the Gays bill.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, he's the one who is also up on international charges for crimes against humanity because of the hateful rhetoric that he's been spreading about the LGBT community. World Congress of Families has tried to distance themselves from him since he's been brought up on these international charges of hate crimes, and have said that he has absolutely nothing to do with the World Congress of Families and never has. He's never been associated with us, but that just is part of the yarn of lies that this group spreads about anything and everything that they do. It's really easily proved that that's a lie when you go to their own website for the World Congress of Families number 8, where they had featured very prominently that Scott Lively would be speaking, and on Scott Lively's own website you can see that he was very excited to speak at the World Congress of Families number 8 there in Moscow before it was canceled.
I've also been invited to Moscow. I don't know that that's going to happen either. They may cancel that conference as well because they said that suddenly, quite different thing than when what Moscow was from when I was a kid. Suddenly, it's not a safe place for atheists.
That's weird, right?
Yeah.
They're allowing religion to run roughshod over civil rights and human rights there in Russia. They've recently passed legislation there in Russia where any mention of gays, lesbians, or bisexuals is treated as propaganda, and you can be thrown in jail for that. And because of that, it's allowed a lot of hate groups a lot more freedom to act on a lot of the rhetoric that they like to spread. And you see things like beatings of gay people in the streets. It doesn't take much searching on the internet to find groups of young Russian men luring other gay Russian men into encounters where they lure them into a meeting under the pretense of a potential gay date, and then it's a group of guys who just end up beating the shit out of this poor kid.
Wow.
And that's happening on I would imagine a daily basis there in Russia. And then, like I said, Scott Lively was a huge help with Uganda passing their Kill the Gays bill. The World Congress of Families has some what they would deem wonderful speakers lined up. They've also got LDS church leaders that will speak. I was very, very disappointed, but not at all really surprised to see that Utah's own governor, Mr. Gary Herbert, will be speaking at the World Congress of Families, along with Utah's Attorney General, Mark Reyes. And, I don't know if you know much about Utah history of late, but the last 2 attorneys general have been charged with various crimes and were arrested earlier this year and are still facing those charges. So that should be pretty exciting.
Speaking of just atheism in Well, atheism and secularism in Utah, and especially in Salt Lake City. I mean, we were all at American Atheist Conference in Salt Lake City, and there was a lot of that. I mean, I know a lot of people asked you, Dan, when you were there, like, what's the climate like here? But is it for looking at it from the outside, is the LDS just in every fabric of the government, or is there any secularism at all, or is it just as much as they can get away with, they're going to get away with?
They're so much entwined with the local government here. I believe that it's over 70% of Utah's legislature are all LDS, and that kind of fits in the demographic of Utah as a whole. Salt Lake City proper is much less LDS than the state as a whole, but Utah as a whole, last I heard, was between 60 and 70% LDS. The legislature, and actually now that I recall, the legislature is actually more than 90% LDS. So they control everything here. They control the liquor laws. I think everybody who came to the conference was made aware of how strange some of the liquor laws here in Utah are. We're not a dry state or a dry county or a dry city or anything like that, but they have some really, really strange laws. We've got what they have deemed the Zion Curtain at bars and restaurants, where the bartender cannot mix drinks openly where other patrons can see it. They had to erect some type of wall so that they could hide mixing the drinks, because it may be too alluring for young children who are watching him make drinks, and they'll say, "Mommy, what's that? I want to try that."
Young children in a bar.
In a restaurant.
Okay. Do you have bars, right?
Yeah, we have bars.
And do they also have to have this partition up there?
The bars do not, unless they are also primarily listed as a restaurant.
Unless it's a bar and grill, and then you have.
Yeah, Utah
I'm just confused.
Oh, you're not the only one. Utah's liquor laws are really, really confusing. I mean, they have a limit on all types of different types of liquor licenses. You can be a regular beer bar, you can be a full-service bar, you can be a restaurant who serves drinks, you can be a restaurant who serves only beer, I believe.
Now, I was pleasantly surprised when I went, because I brought a couple of cases of beer that I like, because I had been warned that when you come to Utah that everything is 2%.
You were bootlegging.
I just accidentally had
personal use, sir.
And they fell off a truck and happened to fall into my car. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, a case of Russian and a case of German. But anyway, when we got there, we found out that there's all these microbrews in the area. I mean, there's microbrews all over the U.S. now, because
fantastic microbrews here, yeah.
Because the United States is famous for making really shit beer, and so they finally come up with a bunch of craft beers that are really kick-ass. And there's no exception in Salt Lake City. I mean, I had some wonderful. I had some really, really stout stuff. I mean, like the bottle. I actually kept the bottle. It's in the other room. It has this demonic face on it with these like glow in the dark flaming eyes, and I can't remember what the name of this thing was, but I said I have
Outer Darkness.
Yes.
I was there with you when you had got that. All right.
Yeah, I gotta have this, right? And so I pour this bottle. It came out. American normal commercial beer is all thin, yellowy, see-through, and and looks like a urine sample. But this stuff came out looking like draining the crankcase of a '65 Chevy. It was black, and it had an odor, and it poured like glop, glop, glop. Looked like it would go well on pancakes.
Yeah, I would imagine that you're talking about Outer Darkness, which I believe is made by Squatters, which was right close to the hotel where the convention was held. So,
yeah, I quite liked that.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of really, really great local breweries here. There's Wasatch and Squatters and Epic, and I think there are 2 or 3 others who have recently started up recently. There are also a few really great distilleries here.
Another thing, since we brought up the last time that I was in Salt Lake City, Utah, the last video that I uploaded a couple days ago was about that event. Did you see it?
I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, well, there was this guy with this cross outside protesting the event. Do you remember him? The guy with the beard?
Yeah, well, there was the guy with the beard. There were the people out there with the piano, and then there's a guy here locally who always runs around with like this
The ram's horn.
animal. Yeah, the ram horn.
Yeah, I saw that
He's
guy.
blowing that all the time. Yeah, yeah, he's really.
So I
crazy.
talked with the guy with the beard and the big cross,
Uh-huh.
and he gave me his 4 blood moon tetrad prophecy that was supposed to confirm a rapture that was supposed to have been on the 23rd of this month.
Oh, and it hasn't happened.
Yeah, and there was supposed to be the asteroid impact, and the United States economy was supposed to collapse, and we were all supposed to have the mark of the devil in order to be able to buy any food or anything. So we were all going to be forced into, and then all of this was supposed to have happened a couple, 3 days ago.
What mark? How would we be marked? Would that be branded, tattooed?
Well, it doesn't really matter because, I mean, even if they didn't do the surgical chip thing, then people would talk about decorative tattoos and say, well, that's the mark of the... I mean, they're going to rationalize whatever justification they can. So I made a video a couple days ago addressed to that guy who was making these prophecies because he said it would be falsifiable. He gave me an end date, and I said, okay, so when this doesn't happen, how will we know? And we had to go through all these parameters for that. And he said that if it doesn't happen, he'll buy me dinner. So I told him that, okay, I expect dinner would cost about $25. You can send it to my PayPal or support me on Patreon. Haven't heard anything.
Maybe it did happen, Aaron. Maybe he got raptured and we didn't because we're non-believers. And
Yeah,
now we're here.
maybe that's the thing. There is only 144,000 true Christians that are going to be raptured, and they all live in single wide trailers out in the desert somewhere where if they all disappeared, nobody'd notice.
Yeah, he was one of the very, very few who was just called back to heaven.
And yet we just haven't noticed that they're going yet. Just, hey, have you noticed that things feel somewhat less oppressive today?
It has been really pleasant around here the past few days. Maybe that's it.
Yes.
So you were the president of Atheists of Utah, right? But now you're not. Now you're not.
I am not.
Were you overthrown or?
Overthrown?
Yeah, was there a coup or a impeachment? What happened?
No, so the way the Atheists of Utah group works here is that they have a 5-member board, and you're elected for a 3-year term. And they stagger that among the 5 members, right, so that you don't turn over the entire board whenever there's a new election. So
that's very, very democratic of you.
Well, and there's no, there's a limit for your term in that each term is only 3 years, but there's no limit to how many terms you can run for, right? So a lot of people had wanted me to run for another term, but and I was really tempted. But at the same time, I didn't want it to be that there was one person in charge of the local group forever and ever and ever. I wanted to get some new ideas, some new blood, have other people, have the opportunity to be able to lead the group and to take it in whatever direction they saw fit. And, in the meantime, I've just been kind of acting as a consultant. They have a lot of different questions that they have as far as how to best organize events, how to get people out, how to get people to become actual paying members, which is really, really hard.
Yeah.
For us atheists to give money to any organization, right?
Shannon and I are just talking about that.
Even if it's in support of something that we are fully on board with. Once people leave a religion and don't have to pay tithing anymore, it's like, fuck you, I'm not going to give you any money.
And it's not just atheists either. I think the majority of atheists are liberal, if not very liberal. Liberals just don't buy shit. You know what I mean? Conservatives buy fucking all kinds of stuff. If you put a gun and the word Jesus on a T-shirt, you'll sell 1,000 of them. But you can't, it's anything that's a liberal motive. People just don't get behind. They don't support the charities the way they need to, and that's a shame because the church, they're money-raising motherfuckers. You know what I mean? They got it down. They got it. You're gonna buy your fucking salvation through me because I talk to God and you don't, you poor bastard. That's how the church does it.
Yeah, what are you going to hold over their head if you can't hold over the threat, either the promise of eternal reward or the threat of eternal torture? how else are you going to spur people to give you 10% of their income every fucking month?
Yeah, we got nothing to threaten them with. We got no false promises we can make. What the hell? We're clearly in the wrong racket. And I understand now, listening to you guys, why it is that so many people have accused me of being a socialist. Because I don't like lies, and I have huge issues with this. I don't like people being misled or misdirected. And one of the things that leads to that is capitalism. Let me give you an example. Somebody stands out on the street corner holding up a sign that says $5 pizza, or essentially that's what it is. It's $5 pizza and it's underlined. And you think, oh, well, that's a great deal. I'll pull in for that. But then when you get really close to the sign, you see that the underline is actually fine print that says, with any purchase of 2 large pizzas at regular price. Shit like that pisses me off. Like, why is it that they tell you $4.99 instead of $5? Do they really think you're stupid? Well, actually, a lot of people are. They see that and they think, oh, $4? I wouldn't pay it if it was $5.
It's a balancing act, I think, between trying to raise money for a group, but also provide them something, because the church, like you said, Aaron, they're selling something that's free, that doesn't cost anything, and we like to fancy ourselves philanthropists and supporters of good causes, but unless you're getting something, liberals and atheists at large are not. They're not that generous with what they do, so they need to be getting something tangible back.
I gotta question what you mean when you say the religion is selling something that's free.
Yeah,
I think both aspects of that are wrong. I mean, they are clearly selling something, but it's not that they're selling something for free. They're selling nothing, and they're selling it for a cost.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, I mean,
they're making up a deficit and selling you something that doesn't exist to pay back that deficit that they created.
Yeah, very, very little overhead costs there.
Right.
Exactly the same thing as making up some ailment that you might get, and then making up the snake oil that will prevent that from happening.
Right.
Or attributing the symptoms of something that is already in existence or already happening or happens to everyone. Like, do you wake up tired? Are you sometimes sore? Are you sometimes worrying about things? Well, try Jesus. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the video that I did where I was talking about the end of days, the failed prediction for a few days ago, it highlighted this guy with this whiteboard that was making all kinds of ridiculous associations, where everything that ever happens or that is scheduled to happen on September 23rd somehow ties into biblical prophecy if you just rationalize it enough. The way he could distort things. And where was I going with this? I can't believe I lost my thought.
What are you drinking tonight?
Damn it! Well, now I'm going to have to go wander around and see if I can find my thought.
Well, we were talking about Christians selling you nothing, and demanding a price for this nothing that they're selling, and this guy talking about the end of the world.
Yeah, it'll come to me in the next 10 minutes when it's no longer appropriate timing. I hate when that happens.
Yeah, it's bound to happen every now and then.
Well, we were talking last episode at PastaCon about the beauty of going live, Aaron. When you lose your train of thought and you're live, there's nothing you can do about it. Speaking of live versus not live, the podcast that you're at the helm of. Dan.
Oh, I remember what it was.
What is it?
Too late, Aaron. Too late. So the podcast that you're at the helm of, Dan.
Yes.
You were talking about associations.
Aaron's not going to let us move into that. We'll do that next.
You're talking about associations, and this guy was saying that the last time that they fired up the Large Hadron Collider, there was an earthquake in Japan. The Fukushima disaster. So he blamed the Hadron Collider for that because it was happening at the same time.
If it hadn't been that, it would have been a windstorm in fucking Kansas. It would have been an earthquake in California. It would have been a fucking riptide in Florida. I mean, it would have been something somewhere, right? He's got a
What was it? Boobquake? What about boobquake?
This guy was so delusional. He thought that the Large Hadron Collider, it's like 26 miles wide. He actually envisions it as being this big, and that it spins really fast and creates a portal where you can see faces in it. He's got absolutely no idea what it is. He couldn't even pronounce it. He said it was a hadron or a hydron or however you say.
And in the meantime, he's picturing it as Dumbledore's pensive.
The most bewilderingly inane human being I've ever seen in my life. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead with what you were saying.
I was just going to give Dan an opportunity to talk about his podcast, and I was going to ask if they do it live.
This is my podcast. I get to interrupt and change the subject if I want to.
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah, and that's going to happen whether you take it by force or not, right, Aaron? Let's go back. So tell us about your show, Dan.
So I am co-host of the Godless Rebelution. That's Rebelution with a B. And my two co-hosts are Matt Mitchell and Ryan Duffy, two guys I just fucking love hanging out with. I mean, we get together, we record once a week. We do not do it live because
pussies.
Because we're pussies, basically, giant pussies who we just either we haven't figured that out or we've figured out that doing it live means that we can't fuck up at all. We still fuck up all the time anyway, but then we can edit out the really bad fuck-ups, right?
You can edit out when you lose track. Aaron and I were talking about possibly going not live, but as it stands now, here we are.
Yeah, well, one of the only advantage I can see to doing a live show is that a lot of live shows have that live viewer call-in. Now, if we could figure out how to do a viewer call-in, I'd love to do that.
We can do a live chat where people can come in and talk to us and via chat all the time if we want.
But I don't want it to be in chat messages. I mean, I remember the times of blog TV, and I don't want to be sitting there reading the text message and then responding. No, not like that. I want to, the Atheist Experience has a person call in and you can hear the voice talking and it's a real-time conversation. I want to have more of that kind of thing.
That's so high tech,
if you're going to do it live, there's a reason to have it live. I mean, most people listen to this show in their car on the way to work, and I want to respect that. That's where.
Hello, all of you listening in your car.
No, that's great. If that's the largest portion of our demographic, then okay. We don't have anybody ever calling in live because we don't even. Do we even know how to set up live?
I don't know if there's a way to do it the way we're set up. I mean, we could probably set it up if we used a different system, but we just use Google Hangouts, and I think it's because we just were lazy with the setup and we just kind of rolled with it. I like it live like this. I like to be able to see that. That's a dog running by. I like to have.
Well, there's another.
This is real life, people.
This is real life, baby. This happens.
There's another issue with live. And I realize I can do special episodes on other occasions, but there are people that I want to talk to that are not in our time zone.
Yes, absolutely. That's probably, you're right, that's the biggest problem. We've ran into that more than once where we want to talk to somebody that's, at work, it's 1 p.m. where they are or whatever. That is a big issue.
And so, people that want to listen in Australia or in England, wherever, it's a huge gap in time, and I can't interview people in those places without severely compromising their schedules unless I do something like a special time just for them, which I can do, and I'm certainly happy to do for a number of exceptions.
Yeah, we don't do the show live, like I said, just because we've never really thought of trying to set it up that way. I think one of the things that we tried to focus on right out of the gate was having a great sound quality. So I mentioned pre-show that the microphone I'm using isn't the microphone that I typically use when we're doing the show. We've got our own regular studio mics that we use that go through a mixing board and are saved on a Tascam, and then we take that and upload it and massage the sounds and get everything right where we want it to be and edit out all of our major fuck-ups or make something sound just a little bit better than it did when we were actually recording it, and that's what goes out to everybody.
Yeah, well, I did that kind of thing too, where I, actually invested in the equipment to do the job, and then Google Hangouts was failing me, so we had to make improvements in our, dedicated internet and that sort of thing.
I think I think we're ultimately gonna have a lot better sound quality now that I think Arn's inbound and outbound Ethernet and cable connection is better. So Dan, your show sounds good. I've listened to it.
Thank you.
Where do people find it?
They can find our show at podbean.godlessrebelution.com. We've also got a Facebook page, which is just facebook.com/godlessrebelution. They can tweet us questions and show ideas at TGR Podcast. They can also call us and leave messages or send us text messages at 330-81-REBEL. We're all over the place.
Arn, we should set up voicemails and see what kind of weird shit we get.
If you can figure out how to do that, I'm too old.
Well, Dan can tell us how to do it. Well, I'm going to do that, listeners.
Okay.
I'm going to set up voicemail, and we want you to do some. And we'll do a show where we just play them. We won't listen to them beforehand or anything. We'll just fucking fire them up.
That's just asking for problems, man.
Hey, you never know. That's the beauty of live.
Especially doing it live. You're just, oh boy.
What?
Well, I'm excited. I'm going to have to tune into that show.
That's a listenable show. It's one of those things where it's almost the worse that they say, the worse they get, the more captivating the show will be.
Now you're just, they're going to be crawling out of the woodwork, man. All of the crazies.
People
they're going to be all
now
over you.
Hoping that we tweet out the phone number or whatever as soon as possible. So anybody that's watching this live, and anybody that's been watching it for a long time, knows I used to have a much longer beard than I have now. And Dan, your beard is just out of control awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
2 years in the making. There's pictures floating around out there when you and I had similar beards, but now we're on opposite ends of the spectrum. I just want to say that it's looking great, and I'm glad you're still going with it.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. So I want to tell you, I think the last time I saw you was in Memphis for the American Atheist Convention, right?
Yeah.
And you were sitting across the table from me, and we were in the middle of the conversation, and I think you just kind of stopped and went, "Why do you do that?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And you said, "Why do you do that? Why do you trim the hair above your mustache?"
Yeah, why do you trim your mustache?
And you're like, "All you got to do is just do this, man. Just keep doing this. Just keep pushing it out of the way, and eventually it'll grow long." And I said, "No, I've tried to do that, and it ends up getting in the way, and you get a mouthful of hair if you're drinking something or you take a bite of anything. So just to try to prove to myself, one way or the other, I did grow it out as long as I possibly could, and I was doing this like every 5 fucking seconds, man."
Yeah.
And I had Matt and Ryan over here, and the way we do the show is typically, they arrive at like 6 o'clock. We have some pizza and beers, chit chat, talk about what we're going to talk about, just kind of catch up with each other. Then we come down here and record the show. So we're standing upstairs eating pizza and drinking beer, and I don't know, it was like after 3 or 4 times trying to put this little bit of pizza in my mouth and getting a fucking mouthful of hair, I just was like, "Fuck it, I can't do it anymore. I'm done." And I ran upstairs and like trimmed all of my mustache hair out of my face.
Oh, god damn.
Okay, so
and I came back down and I'm like, "Sorry, I'm gonna have to tell Mark, fuck it, I tried.
Make it,
I couldn't do it anymore. It was driving me fucking nuts."
And it's funny because I trim mine all the way down now too because I'm not wearing my beard long anymore.
it's really fascinating viewing, guys. But let me just
I'm sorry, listeners. That was
Let me take this opportunity to plug Clubman Mustache Wax.
Welcome to Beard Chat.
That's right, beard chat. Now that would be that would be a terribly listened to podcast. There would be no one would listen to that.
Okay, so what you said this group, this World Congress of Families, whatever, is they're hosting their conference in Utah, in Salt Lake City?
Yes.
Okay, and so like all of your heads of state there are speaking at that event. That's a little creepy.
It is really, really creepy. And actually, Governor Herbert and the Attorney General Reyes weren't initially scheduled to speak. This was something that was added to their roster within the last couple weeks.
One of the things that's creepy about that is that Salt Lake City sort of has a famous reputation for turning out their gay sons.
Absolutely, they do. I believe the numbers as far as homeless youth here in Utah are that between 60 and 70% of the homeless youth here in Utah come from LDS families who kicked them out of the home when they found out that they were gay.
Wow.
I mean, there's a really big problem here with LDS families turning out members of their family who, and it fucking kills me. I was raised LDS, right? I was raised LDS. I was baptized when I was 8. I never had a strong testimony of the church, which in Mormon speak means I never really believed it at all.
Yeah, I was told all my life that I was a Jack Mormon.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and it took me a while to figure out that Jack Mormon means that you're not a Mormon at all, but you're still on the books and they're not going to take you off.
Right. Yeah, so, you know, I was raised LDS, I was baptized, never had a strong testimony of the church, left it, you know, stopped attending pretty much right after my baptism. I think part of that was because I was so disappointed in the gifts I got. You know, you're 8 years old. I had no fucking idea what was going on. I had no clue what the baptism was. I was excited to have the family party afterward, where I was told that I would be getting, you know, all of the family members would be coming over. They'd be so proud and so happy, and there would be presents. And then you start opening the presents, and it's, you know, dress clothes to wear to church, and it's the Mormon Quad, which is the Book of Mormon, the Great Pearl of Price, or the Pearl of Great Price, Doctrine and Covenants, and the Bible, King James Version, no less. And you know, I was just really disillusioned. Like I said, I never really believed anybody.
I would be the unwelcome house guest that would bring you Nailed or one of the other books by David Fitzgerald.
Nailed is an awesome book, and so is his book on Mormonism. That's really good. I'm looking forward to I think his next book. Oh man, and I can't remember now if his next book is a follow-up on Nailed or if it's a follow-up on Mormonism. Either way,
I'm about halfway through the 12th of 15 chapters of mine.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I got a message from the publisher that says that if they have it before the end of the year, that they might be able to actually have it on shelves by a year from now.
Wow.
Which I can't imagine why anything would take that long, but
it's got to go through the editing process, and then they've got to make sure
it can't take that long.
They've got to make sure that you haven't just pulled a C.J. Werleman and are copying and pasting straight from somebody else's work.
I am, but I killed that person before they was published.
But you actually provide citations, right? No, growing up in Utah has been kind of weird. Mark asked earlier, or maybe it was you, Aaron, if you know the LDS Church basically just runs everything here, and to a large degree they really do. But I think that with that, and with the persecution that the LDS Church suffered as they were chased across the country before they settled here in Utah, led them to do a lot of different things where, like the separation of church and state here in Utah, as far as the law is written, is much more strict than it is in the U.S. Constitution. Utah State Constitution has many, many more limits as far as what the government can and cannot do, and they're spelled out specifically.
Now, this is important, too. We want to bring this up because the Mormons are one of the very few Christian denominations that actually endorse the separation of church and state, and the reason that they do is because they were the worst hit brunt of all denominations by religious exceptionalism. Famously, it was called the Mormon Execution Order of 1842 or somewhere thereabouts. It was Governor Lilburn Boggs who issued a law, and I think that this was either in Illinois or Missouri. I think it was Missouri, where he issued basically an extermination order, and whole families, women and children, everybody were gunned down or fled the state. Now, there were some repercussions. There was also some retaliation in other places. The Mormons are not pristine. They certainly have dark and hideous places in their past too. But the point is that they were the only denomination recognizing Jesus Christ as their Savior, and that makes them a Christian denomination, regardless what everybody else wants to say about that. It is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints,
Right.
regardless. So if the Mormons believe that they're Christian, and the same thing goes for Catholics. And one of the things that I really hated is about, especially having a Mormon family growing up. People would crap on the Mormons as soon as they would ask me what my religion is, and I knew that any time somebody asks me what my religion is, I know there's already a problem, because if you care what my religion is, there's going to be a problem. Right. I don't know what my religion is. I didn't when I was a kid. I didn't know what my religion is. I never identified as a Mormon. I said my family was Mormon. Mm-hmm. I didn't know if I bought into all the dogma necessarily to meet that definition. People would tell me, well, oh, your family's Mormon, or they wouldn't catch that. They would just say, oh, you're Mormon. Did you know they believe this? And why are you telling me what my family believes? Why are you telling me what you think I believe? And would you like to come in the house and tell my mother that she believes all these crazy things that you just told me? Because I bet she doesn't believe that. And that was an important lesson for me, because I learned that if you want to know what a Mormon believes, or what a Hindu believes, or pretty much what any other religion believes, don't ask a Baptist, because they don't know.
Well, and you can't even go by necessarily what the official church doctrine is, because everybody, I would say that every Christian, every religious person, regardless of their faith, whether it be, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, what have you, they all have their own faith. You can't just go by what you assume their faith to be, right? You have to ask them questions, because most Mormons have no idea about, most of the regular pew sitting, church attending, regular true believing Mormons have no idea about a lot of the church's history and a lot of its original teachings, right? They only know what they've been taught from the pulpit, and the pulpit doesn't tell them a whole lot about the church's darker history.
And they don't tell them anymore the things they told me back in the 70s, like the whole thing about, blacks can't be members of the Mormon Church.
Right.
That changed. That wasn't the case when I was in high school and I was talking to the Mormon missionaries. Then they were very open that black skin was the mark of the devil.
Yep. Yeah, they had a curse of blackness upon their skin, and you had LDS church leaders, no less than Brigham Young, who said that the Negro is a lower species. They're not even basically human, and anybody who chooses to interbreed with them should be murdered.
Yeah, well that's
and they don't tell you that today in church when you go and sit through 3 hours of church meetings.
Yeah, so this guy Lilburn Boggs, the governor, puts out this Mormon execution order and basically drives all the families out, which is why the Mormons ended up in Utah. They needed to go to some relatively uninhabited place where they didn't have this huge Christian conglomeration already overriding them. But the funny thing is when they got there, they pretty much owned everything, and it's not just within the Utah state borders. It's the immediate area. They owned Las Vegas, Nevada, for the longest time, and the presence in the population of residents in Las Vegas is still predominantly Mormon. But that whole corner, the Grand Canyon area, Arizona, Utah, Nevada,
Idaho,
and a bit of Colorado, all of that is largely Mormon. And there are places where I lived in Arizona that are so Mormon that if you're not Mormon, you're unemployed, because you had to be Mormon to get a job.
Yeah, that happens here in Utah all the time. Luckily, I was able to land a gig with the feds and become part of the man and not have to worry about, delving into the local politics as far as locally run and owned businesses, who the majority of them here are, of course, owned by members of the LDS faith.
Yeah, and I got to share this with you, too. There was a time, roughly around 1989, thereabouts, I was living in a little town called, I was working in a town called Springerville, Arizona, briefly. I got this job in a little convenience store down there because they knew my family, and so my family was Mormon, so they assumed that I'm Mormon too, because that's how that works. So they hire me sight unseen. to go to work at this store. I show up, I start doing the job. Then they see me, and I don't know, something about my appearance doesn't shout Mormon to them.
Was your appearance very similar to how it is now?
Very similar, yes, except much, much cuter.
Oh, I'm sure.
but anyway, you know, about was doing my 20-something. So I get this threat from the person who hired me that she said she was going to go back over my person, you know, the profile things that you used to have to fill out, you know, where they ask you all the same question rephrased a bunch of different ways to see if they can trip you up. She said she was going to go back over my personality file and find something questionable and fire me on those grounds. She tells me this to my face that she's going to do this, and the reason that she gives is because I am not Mormon. I am not moral enough to work for her.
Wow.
See, it doesn't matter. You just have to belong to that religion. That belonging to that religion makes you moral. Just like the Baptists in the South say the same thing about being their version of Christian.
I fucking hate that. I hear that shit all the time. Oh, he's a good Mormon boy. Oh, she's a good Mormon girl. Oh, they're a good Mormon family. It's a good Mormon business. Fuck you. You can't just say that because somebody claims to hold the same religious beliefs as you that they're necessarily a good person. That's horseshit.
Yeah, claims to hold or was culturally conditioned to not offend the beliefs of everybody else and just pretend to go along with it. These do not make you moral. Believing absolute horseshit for no good reason does not make you a good person.
No, not at all.
So, and here's the beautiful contradiction of that. So, now, as I told you, this woman threatens, the one that owned the store that I'm working at, or she was the manager of the store that I was working at, threatens to fire me on questionable grounds because of this judgment that not being Mormon means that I'm immoral. I showed up for work the next day anyway, because it's the only job I can get. It's a small town. You don't get jobs in a small town. I've already seen what happens trying to get a job in Mormonville, right? So I'm gonna go back to work, and I'm gonna actually have her force me out the door before I quit. So I show up, and I've got a new manager because God was smiling on me that day and worked out a plan. The night after she told me, the night that she told me that she was going to fire me for being immoral, she was arrested for prostitution and drug trafficking.
Oh, that's perfect.
And I never saw her again. The guy who replaced her was quite funny himself. He was one of those Pentecosts, one of those really hateful people with the short man in prison syndrome. And he got me up against a wall. He's ready. He's got his fist balled up. This is my manager in the store who decides that I'm not of his religion. That makes me evil. But the funny thing is, he thinks I am Mormon because he doesn't know what the hell a Mormon is. So he tells me, he pushes me against the wall, cocks his fist back to fire, and says, when you go to the Mormon temple, you go to pray to Satan, don't ya? Think about this for a moment. We've got a guy who actually thinks that all Mormons know that they go to church to pray to Satan, that there's 12 million people who know they're secretly satanic, and that he's going to threaten me with a punch to the face that will cause me to confess that Mormonism is actually a satanic cult. That's how bewilderingly inane these sorts of people are. So I tell him, I'm not Mormon. Now he's confused. Now he doesn't know to punch me or not. So he backs up and says, well, what are you then? And I said, believe me, you don't want to know. I thought that was the best way to end that.
I will curse your entire family.
I was not, I need to bring this up, I was not yet aware that I was an atheist.
Oh, yeah?
Because at that time I still believed that atheists were some kind of a nihilist who believe in nothing, because that's what I've always been told, that atheists believe in nothing. Well, I knew I wasn't a nihilist. I know I believe in me, so I can't be an atheist, right? I believe there's things. So I don't qualify as an atheist. So that makes me an agnostic. This is one of the reasons I get so adamant. This is one of the reasons I get so adamant. Whenever somebody tells me, well, I'm an agnostic, I say, do you believe in God? Then no, you're not an agnostic. You're an atheist. You know, buckle down and accept it. And people get mad at me for that. Because I was lied to for 15 years over this, or I was lied to for longer than that. But for 15 years I was an atheist and didn't know it. I called myself an agnostic. Just like Every agnostic in this country, very few exceptions. There are a few agnostics who admit that they are agnostics, but who believe in God. They believe in God, but they can't identify that God, so they say they're agnostic about God. There are very few exceptions. Almost everybody who identifies as an agnostic is an atheist.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, when it boils down to it, it's do you have an active belief in a god or gods or not, right? And if you don't, then you lack a belief in gods. You lack that theism. So
Yeah, and then
yeah,
then they want to attack the etymology of the word and what did Huxley mean by agnosticism. Well, it doesn't matter what Huxley meant by agnosticism. Really, it doesn't, because Huxley created that word as an opposite of Gnosticism. So he's not even using the right meaning of it either.
yeah.
And you get some people that are really pedantic over that. And then there's a couple of people out there that want to argue that I have the definition of atheism wrong, and that everybody else, like yourself, representative of American Atheists, also has the definition of everything wrong. Everybody representing atheism has the definition of atheism wrong.
Because we've never heard anything to the contrary.
Because we don't accept the mistake that Huxley made as though it wasn't a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you mentioned earlier about Mormon families, and we talked a little about the homeless youth here in Utah who, you know, the vast majority have been kicked out of their LDS families' homes, and it really bothers me when one of the main tenets or one of the primary beliefs and something that most Mormons find is so wonderful about the LDS Church is their belief in this promise of everlasting life and that families are forever. That's one of their you know, little mantras that they say to themselves all the times, is that families are forever, and you'll see it, you know, emblazoned across kitchen walls and living room walls and family room walls here in Utah in vinyl stickers and cursive writing, you know, that families are forever. They're forever as long as you believe in whatever your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents have believed for as long as they can remember. The second that you question any of those beliefs, you're no longer a member of the family, and they'll drop you in a second. And that kills me. It slays me that these LDS families can choose belief in an invisible sky wizard and the promise, without any justified reason for believing it, the promise of an everlasting life with their family members who believe the same thing that they do at the time. But as soon as they don't, then they don't want them to be a member of their family anymore. And they choose that over their own flesh and blood family members.
Yeah, and
that kills me.
It's a sad thing that since a lot of these people are really against divorce too, then the only escape for a bad marriage is death. And it's not. If you're Mormon.
Well, and
and here's the funny thing, I'm being completely serious. I knew people that were like this, that believed this, right? And there's one old lady, she was like in her 70s, and she knew she was going to die soon and was demanding a rapid divorce from her husband because she didn't want to still be married to him after she was dead.
I have stories like that in my family. My aunt, you know, divorced my uncle. They had been married in the temple, had been sealed in the temple, and when they got divorced, her primary fear after the divorce was that until she could get an actual temple annulment, that if she were to die and he were to die, that in the afterlife he would be able to call her to him in the afterlife and call her to him in the celestial kingdom, and she would have to go to him because they were sealed in the temple. That was her greatest fear after divorcing this asshole. And she remains a true believing member of the LDS Church. It kills me.
This is one of the really dumbfounding things to me all the times that I, as a little boy, listened to stories about how, and I'm not kidding about this, how we would have mansions. We would all live in mansions, and the streets would be paved with gold.
As if that would matter, right? Why would that even matter in the afterlife?
How would that matter? How would that make any sense? Everybody has a mansion. Good. You know what? I don't need a mansion. Just have I got enough food? Am I comfortable? You know, is the heat on? I mean, you know, does it need to be on? Do I have reasonable ways of learning new things? No, that doesn't happen. And there's nothing for me in heaven. You know, I don't care about the obvious lie that the streets are made of gold and that we all live in mansions. Why would we be walking around playing tennis and living in mansions and still be worrying about pissing off the God that is now in our immediate presence and can understand every one of our thoughts? So you better be thinking nice thoughts, because you'd better not think bad thoughts, because you're here with me until eternity, and I'll know if you've been thinking bad thoughts. So, what kind of an eternity is that?
I will punish you for thought crimes.
How is that any worse than hell?
Well, there are so many problems with heaven and
Hell
hell.
at least has more interesting women.
Yeah, heaven and hell are some of my favorite things to talk about, because, you know, when you start thinking about heaven and hell, anybody who goes to heaven who has a family member who goes to hell, are they just going to suddenly have their minds wiped of any memory of this family member who's gone to hell?
Yeah, that's the old saying. If hell exists, heaven can't.
Yeah.
You know, it's that simple, and that's the paradox, I think, that ultimately started me down the road of disbelief. Is just as simple as that. Well, I love someone. If they're in hell and I go to heaven, then it's not heaven for me.
Yeah, my story is a little worse than that. Hell was actually the first religious belief that I rejected. And I remember when I was 12, and I've told the story a number of times, but still, when I was 12, I was reading the Bible, and I wasn't very far into it before I had enough. I threw it across the room in disgust, because this was not divine wisdom. This was not the word of a being that is made of love. This was not the edicts or mandates or history of a being worthy of respect, much less worship. So I offered up a prayer, earnestly believing that it exists, and believing still that hell exists. And I demanded that God explain himself. Either he explain how the Bible got it all wrong about him, or justify the horrible atrocities and ignorant stupidity that is being blamed on him in this book. And that if he did neither of these things, my condition was he could not have my soul. I damned myself, believing in hell, believing in God. I damned myself on a matter of principle, because what I read in the Bible was so disturbing and disgusting. Now, fortunately, that prayer was answered. Very clearly, I got lots and lots of information to show that the Bible got God all wrong. So wrong that he doesn't even exist, and they blame him for it anyway. So in that sense, the Bible was answered. But I had to logically realize hell cannot exist. And the Bible doesn't really talk about hell that way anyway. Because it says that you'll be punished in this life, not in the next one. There's several places that go over like that talk about you will die the death, right? Just the death. You don't go anywhere. You just die the death. And it's the same belief that a lot of other people had at the time, where all of the dead go to the land of the dead, where you are dead. You don't do anything. You're dead. You don't think anything. You don't dream anything. You're just dead. And so people were misrepresenting, interpreting all of it. They were taking their hell out of Dante's Inferno, but not out of the Bible. So they're being complete hypocrites on this. I had to reject hell first off. And as you said, heaven could not exist if hell did.
Yeah, not at all. They're mutually exclusive.
So we are down to about our last minute or two here, and this has been a fun conversation, but I think we've been off topic almost the entire time.
Sorry, that's kind of how I do my show. We just kind of rant and ramble and move from one thing to the next, and just try to have a good conversation.
All right. Well, do either of you gentlemen have anything you would like to close with?
I want to remind people that immediately following the show, we're going to pop over into our private Facebook group where the people that are supporters of our show, that you can get in on the after show with the video, pop right in here just like we are now. Also have access to the private Facebook group. If you want to sign up for that, you can go to therod-men.com, and there's a spot on there that says Rod Men Supporters. It costs $3.99 a month, and you can join us and all of our guests every week. So if you're already a member, catch Dan and Aaron and myself over there in a few minutes. If not, thank you for listening.
All right, and we are done. Good night, everyone.
Good night.